Planning an event that's just around the corner? PC NameTag is here for planners with their exclusive event badge, plus other meeting supplies, including promotional products. Count on customized services that include consultation, printing and assembly, then delivery of your imprinted products to your next event. PC NameTag saves time and helps you present an extraordinary event, one that leads to memorable and meaningful connections. Call 888-698-5500 or visit pcnametag.com today.
Are you a follower? Okay, so we're gonna call the Adler.
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Editor-in-Chief Beth Kormanik.
Hi, David.
Hey, Beth, here we are, another GatherGeeks.
Absolutely. And today we are bringing our listeners a conversation with DJ Saul. He is CEO of iStrategyLabs, an agency based in Washington, D.C. that creates digital and physical experiences for brands. He advises companies on their digital campaigns, experiential marketing strategy, branding, and partnership development. And then they can physically execute these ideas. So you're going to hear the word prototype more than once in this conversation. The company has wildly creative people who are thinking about how to dream up tech-enabled experiences that have a specific brand message. DJ has spoken at several BizBash Live events, and we're excited to have him on GatherGeeks. David, iStrategyLabs does digital-only work at times, but we absolutely consider them part of the live events world.
Well, he talks about how everything's morphing together. The digital agencies are after the experiential agencies, and everything is all mished up and mashed up together today. And everybody's trying to figure out their own part of the pie, I think. And what they're finding is that there is one big pie that they all have to contribute to.
Right. So in this conversation, you talk with him about the hottest tech right now, think voice, think AR, what's on the horizon and what has reached or passed its peak.
Yes, that was very interesting how he said photo booths may not be the new shiny object anymore, that they have to have new ways of thinking about how to do them.
Right, exactly. Peak selfie is over.
Yep.
People, don't get us wrong, people love a good photo booth.
People love the photo
It's what's
booths.
the next evolution in that step.
Yep.
So let's take a listen.
So DJ, welcome to GatherGeeks.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
First, we have to clear up your name. When I first heard your name, I thought you were a DJ. Do you get that all the time?
Yeah, I do. And to overly confuse things, I have dabbled in the art of the spin.
So you do the DJ thing on the side. You have done the DJ thing on the side.
I can't, not enough to actually say, quote, on the side, but yeah. And I've done 2 weddings for close friends, one of which I was hidden behind the curtain like the Wizard of Oz. It was very strange. And a few events around town here in DC, but just for fun.
Do you know what we call? You know what in the event industry they call your friends that are vendors at your weddings? They call them frienders, instead of vendors, because you never know what you're really going to get.
I had more frienders than I had possibly thought, and I didn't even know that term. Perfect.
So you are my IoT go-to rabbi, and I'm
also Jewish, so you can actually call me a rabbi.
Actually, that's good. So this is a world that is totally fascinating to the event industry, and a lot of people think that there's a lot of magic and voodoo behind it. And our friends over at Event Farm call it, how do you create a digital wonderland? And you guys are part of that digital wonderland. Can you explain, first of all, what you guys do as an agency, what your specialty is, and why you're so hot on this topic?
Sure. So quite simply, ISL, or iStrategyLabs. So we're a 65-person shop here in Washington, D.C., with a few folks up in New York. And we, as you know, specialize in the art of the intersection of online and off. And as fuzzy as that sounds, quite simply, that means we are a digital agency at our core, but with digital being all-encompassing as it is, means we also bring the experiential flair and are able to produce for physical spaces, whether that is events or it is a stunt or a pop-up or a massive experiential campaign that ties back to digital, and whether digital means mobile engagement, whether that means social engagement, whether that means a cool synchronous web experience, all of the above. So quite simply, digital and experiential are getting smashed together faster and more interestingly than ever before. And that's a thesis and a hypothesis that we've been testing over and over again for the entirety almost of our 10-year history. And when I say 10 years, that means social media didn't theoretically exist back then when we first started, and that means that digital, quote unquote, meant something a little bit different or a lot different than it means today. But we work with mostly large brands on creative campaigns and digital experiences, and then of course experiential, and that means we get to build our own projects, we get to build our own products, we get to fabricate and produce here in-house. We have a hardware studio or a maker studio right in our office. So it's very strange and unique for a agency who also serves as the digital or social AOR agency of record for brands.
Wait, say that. What is AOR? Yeah. Let's talk in real world language.
Agency of record.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I want to get into
the agency term.
What I have found is that every part of our industry is doing the same thing, but they're calling them all different words. And what the hell is an agency today? And what is the difference between an agency and hiring someone to do your event and completely, is a digital agency an event production company too? Where does it all fit? You have this whole thing about how everything's morphing together. How do you explain what the hell an agency is today and what a production company is and what an event organizer is and down the line?
Yeah. Much like I was just saying, and I think you've seen me put this slide up on a talk that I've given, every once in a while over the last couple of years. They are getting smashed together. So experiential agencies, production studios, for that matter, are sort of wholly in the fact that they're producing video, right? But everyone else, from PR agencies, like everyone thinks they can do everything, and that's sort of been typical, especially for agency CEOs or CMOs to, of course, put their agency in a position to be able to capture new projects and work. But with the rise of social PR agencies have taken that on, to varying degrees of success and efficacy. And then on the experiential side, the event industry better than almost anyone out there. But I would say, when I say AOR, so agency records, so there are experiential AORs, right? But they're typically, doing kind of a fun term, cans and hands. So lots of like trial-based activations, whether it's
say that word again. Say that word again.
Cans in hands.
And what does that mean?
Like if it's Coca-Cola, it's trial, right? It's getting
cans in hands. Okay, yeah, like butts in seats.
In hands.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another fun one that I've heard is you're not for this one. Mabel with a table.
What does that mean?
Mabel with a table is a typical booth experience at an event.
Uh-huh.
Yes, that's a fun one. Anyways, so with experiential AORs, they're typically doing larger scale activations, but then of course there are, a little bit closer to your world, there are folks that only deal in, large trade show experiences. And that's something that I know that you've been tracking and following and producing for lots and lots of years. But then for digital agencies who are now forced to think more and more about the physical world, and then conversely, experiential agencies who are now trying to force, digital and mobile solutions into their campaigns and experiences, it does mean that everyone is sort of stepping on each other's toes.
But what does the client? What do the clients want? Why is it that an event, or I call it convening power, is become more important than ever? And when you do convening power, you have to make sure it's not boring.
Sure. So at the end of the day, especially if we are just talking about events, I would say they want to put on a good show. They want repeat customers, right? So that they're sort of that multifaceted marketplace of, yes, the attendee needs to feel good about, paying for the ticket of the thing that they went to, and the vendor needs to feel good that, enough attendees engaged with their product on display or got enough business cards exchanged or whatever that may be. So there are sort of this there's this multiple tier of happiness. So what does that mean for today? It means that leveraging technology, and whether that's IoT or augmented reality or a lot of VR gets sort of shoved into the event ecosystem, which I have lots of thoughts on. It does mean that, finding new and creative ways to keep people happy, quite simply, because otherwise if attendee might have a good time, but if, the vendors don't feel like it was worth it or valuable, then you may have a tough time executing round 2 next year.
Right. But when you do when you're looking at a brand strategy piece, events are just one high touch point of that and not the entire thing. And so sometimes we in the event industry think it's kind of arrogant to think that we're in part charge of it, but it really is the whole piece that is so important. And that at least the event is now the idea that people of actually having a face-to-face element seems to be more important than ever. And when you do your campaigns, so, how do you sort of like marry those two? The digital, not talking. Go ahead.
Nope.
Go ahead.
No, I'm with you, and it's a good point, and I agree with it. So our take is that we try and design an experience, broadly speaking, that captures the entire spectrum of contemporary human experience and human-centered interaction. And I know it sounds very buzzy, but quite simply, that means that it's the acknowledgement that as much as we are spending more time on our mobile devices than ever before, we're consuming more video on our mobile devices than ever before. TV is also not going away as a medium, right? We're connected to multiple devices more than ever before. We are still going to the park. We're walking our kids and our dogs at the park. We're interacting with people at coffee shops. We are spending other hours of our day not on our devices. So it's just quite simply the acknowledgement that we're not giving up on human-to-human interaction, and that means that we're coming up with a campaign concept or creating an experience on behalf of the brand or for ourselves. We produce lots of events, whether in our office or otherwise. It is still capturing maybe it's becoming more naive at this point, but I completely subscribe to the power of human-human interaction, whether it's one-on-one or a small group in more intimate setting. And I know that's something that you believe in as well. But there is so much that we can do to create an impactful and meaningful experience that has absolutely nothing to do with technology.
But the technology, though, behind it of the experience is kind of what you guys are like proving out, that to create a spectacle that uses technology underneath the hood is important. Like, so
yes,
go into some of
exactly.
the ideas that you have. I mean, you're really, how do you capture people's attention? And you've been doing this for years. Sure. And so I want to know what has worked in the past, what is getting old, and what is on the horizon.
Great question. Okay. So to your point, as much as I was just talking about the power of keeping technology on the sidelines, if we are concepting something for ourselves or for a brand or a client that is going to feature technology in some capacity, we do strive to keep technology hidden as much as possible behind the scenes, therefore creating that magical illusion that Steve Jobs himself was quite passionate about, keeping technology hidden. And it's something a lot of folks have done very well and a lot of folks much less so. So a couple of things that we've done, I'll actually start with some of our own sort of internal products and experiments that I think did a really nice job doing this. So the first one would be the selfie mirror, and that actually did have a fun acronym. I think it was self-enhancing live feed imaging engine, which we stopped using because it was just too hard to say. But we created the selfie mirror, which was a two-way pane of glass, and then 5 key components, including a $3,000 camera, all hidden behind the glass. So you don't see anything. It's triggered by facial recognition. It has these embedded LEDs behind that shine through that could either give you kind of a stoplight or a 3, 2, 1, or a, stand here, kind of give you these cues behind the glass. And it would take your photo at incredibly high resolution, hence the expensive camera, and then automatically tweet it out to a Twitter account, Twitter feed, Facebook page, etc. So we did that in like 4 days of rapid prototyping, just stemming from this initial insight and this was in 2014, I want to say, sort of, peak, not quite plateau, but peak selfie buzz, right? I mean, it's kind of funny to think about the selfie really, came out of nowhere in like 2012, 2013. I still remember, seeing them kind of take over the internet and, seeing people taking them out in the wild and being like, I can take that photo for you. I don't know why you were taking your own photo. But anyways, so we wanted to capture the zeitgeist and the magic of the rise of the selfie and hide it all magically behind a piece of glass and a mirror. So that got a tremendous amount of attention. I think we got like 300,000 views on a little Vimeo that we put up on the internet in a very, very short period of time. And that has turned into actually quite a few bespoke engagements with other brands. We've built one for Facebook's headquarters that's at their HQ in Menlo Park, and went around to, backstage at the Oscars and the Emmys, which was super fun. So the next one that we did, actually just two more quick ones. One, and this gets into kind of the crux of fun, unique IoT products. We called it the Pi Pal, and it was a magic pizza ordering button. So we 3D printed this ugly hunk of plastic because we wanted to prototype very, very quickly. And quite simply, you push the button and it is connected to your Domino's account. And mind you, this was not a project for Domino's. This was just something that we did. We had to pick a pizza brand, and Domino's actually has this API, which is Application Programming Interface. It's how software talks to other software and sometimes hardware, in this case. So we were able to tap into the Domino's API, and all you have to do is press the button and it automatically pings the server to trigger your favorite order on Domino's. Now, we did this in 2015. Flashing forward to now, Domino's actually kind of has become famous in their marketing and R&D for making it as easy as humanly possible to order a pizza. So they even did some fun stuff with like Amazon, and a few other people have done similar things, like hacking an Amazon Dash button. Obviously, right after that, you could order Domino's pizza with the pizza emoji on Twitter. So it was sort of right up their alley. We just happened to do it for fun. That video also got hundreds of thousands of views in a very short period of time, and there was some magic that it didn't look like a beautiful Apple product. It was literally this ugly piece of 3D printed plastic, but the concept was novel, especially at the time, and we were able to showcase the power of simple IoT and rapid prototyping. And then the last thing I thought would be mentioned, and then we can talk about some of our sort of bigger experiences, especially for brands, clients, events, and what have you. It's called Dorothy, and this was at peak wearable buzz, which is wearables are still hot and still interesting and not going anywhere. But a couple of years ago, they were sort of taking over the what's coming next technology conversation. So Dorothy was a little wearable that you clip into your shoe, and it featured a gyroscope and an accelerometer, two key features that are in most of our smartphones, if not all smartphones now. So it's measuring your movement, quite simply. So what Dorothy did is you would switch it on, sits in your shoe. Anytime that you would click your heels 3 times, aka Dorothy, it would trigger a call to your cell phone from a fake account that would say like your boss. So like your boss was calling. The whole point is to get you out of
your meeting,
a weird situation, a bad conversation, a meeting, a bad date, exactly. And then what we did with it is kind of kept the endpoint open so that it could trigger just about anything you'd want it to trigger. So, order pizza, like we were just talking about, summon an Uber to your location, could also send your location to 3 contacts. So a lot of the attention around that one, and that did very well. We were on, Good Morning America and Today Show and Meredith Vieira. That was super fun and very stressful. A lot of the magic there was around safety, especially for like women on campus, for example. So that got a lot of attention and inspired some other sort of similar products. And the only reason we were actually about to launch it properly on Kickstarter, and I can say this now because it's been long enough, but we ran into a bit of a roadblock with Warner Brothers' army of lawyers who were nonplussed about the IP infringement on Dorothy Ruby. And we called the device the Ruby, the concept with Dorothy, and then, quote, clicking your heels 3 times. Fair enough. So we could have changed the name, but I thought some of the magic was in the name, so we moved on. Anyways, that is a quick or not so quick tour of sort of three things that we built internally showcase the magic of IoT and especially keeping technology hidden behind the scenes.
And so what things now are the hot things that you are producing? What is the next? You said that we're at the peak. We were at the peak of wearables. We're at the peak of selfies. To be a forward-thinking person, what are we not at the peak of?
All right. So here's a quick hit list. Let's see. First, I would actually start with voice, and tying this back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago with regard to agencies, creative agency structure and designation, and sort of wherever everything fits together. VaynerMedia, who has been sort of one of the primary and major players with regard to social strategy and execution, and they serve as the social agency record for a number of brands. We've done a little bit of work with them. We've also gone head-to-head with them. They're also 5 times bigger than us, just for a sense of scale. They sort of made, and Gary Vaynerchuk specifically is the founder, right?
He was one of our speakers, by the way, at our events.
Amazing. Yeah. He's the man. They made a little bit of a splash, at least inside the agency ecosystem, by announcing that they were the first voice AOR, voice agency of record for a brand. So kind of inventing a new category within this broader service industry, which I thought was super interesting and made me a little bit jealous for not thinking of that myself, because we have also produced a few branded Alexa skills for a few brands. Most recently, the Wizards and Capitals, the NBA and NHL teams here in DC, respectively. So they sort of created a little bit of a splash a little bit ago. Sign of the times, because voice, to answer your question, is close to the top, if not the top bullet point of what to keep an eye on with regard to emerging technology and how it impacts not just events, but every sector and every nuanced little marketplace that exists out there. It's a big deal. Even if you don't have a Google Home or one of the 5 different versions and flavors that Amazon provides with their Alexa products, I would still argue that it will impact you, the royal you, in some way within the next 5 years, if not this year, if it hasn't already.
How about actually physically at events? I mean, are there use cases of using Alexa for check-in or for things like that?
So the interesting thing with regard to an event in voice is that, with a lot of ambient noise, that is still something that's being figured out. So, maybe in a booth experience, sure, I've seen them deployed, but as a functional, concierge platform, for example, I haven't seen that fully figured out, but I know that, the big players in the space and some of the smaller players in the space are also, fine-tuning, enhancing, and figuring out how to make voice work with ambient noise in the background.
So that's in the lab. That's one of those ideas that's in the lab.
Yeah. And then speaking of, the voice lab, one of the things that we're playing around with, there are a few startups, some of them venture-backed, some of them will probably do quite well, who are prototyping their own voice platforms that are completely separate and walled off from Apple, Amazon, Facebook, et cetera, Google, meaning they're privacy first. So that's sort of the other big, concern around voice. Even take Alexa. They claim that it's, only passively listening when you trigger it with a voice invocation, i.e. Alexa, saying the word Alexa. But there were, whether it's bugs or otherwise, there are, use cases that are suggesting that it is listening, if not most of the time, perhaps even all the time. Some Apple's products as well, and then there's the concern around getting targeted ads based on what you're talking about with your family at home. Like it gets into creepy territory pretty quickly. So there are some platforms that are out there that are software only, not even hardware yet, but just software interfaces that are privacy first and highly customizable, and can sync with any custom piece of hardware. So for folks like us who can build our own, fabricate our own physical products, launch our own circuit boards, plug it into something like I just described, and all of a sudden we can make our own voice assistant that is completely free from every other ecosystem.
So what are the other things that are in the lab and are about to not yet peak, but that you see coming down the pike?
Totally. So augmented reality quickly in the last year, I would say, has sort of supplanted virtual reality in terms of the MR, mixed reality, or XR category. Alt reality, right? So this is in our phones. If you have the newest iPhone, it's widely available on most Android devices now. It's being featured in Apple's latest ads, newest operating system. You can see that they have the giant T-Rex, walking around on a little park out in the real world. So this is widely available. No headset required. So augmented reality, just as a category, is, I'd say, dramatically fascinating and interesting. Amazon just came out with their platform. Snapchat just opened up for designers, developers to be able to create their own world lenses, so to speak. So this stuff, and Facebook's AR Studio, we got access to that about a year ago, which is just in your Facebook camera. Like if you swipe over the camera, there are effects in there, and some of them branded. So if you video game launches featured custom effects that you can do directly in your phone.
Well,
so it's all of a sudden here
on the AR. I totally believe that. I mean, I was just, I think I mentioned this in a previous podcast, that I was just at MasterCard House before the Grammys and heard Will.i.am speak on his graphic comic series, and nice. I downloaded the AR and started looking at it and realized that I'm going all back into the magazine business, because I think that the portable magazine, magazine becomes the portable screen for AR that makes that experience 10 times better than just the sitting there print experience. It brings it to life automatically. So I think it's going to be, the resurgence of print is going to be built on AR.
I totally agree. There's even a few sort of pop-up bars that are specifically featuring cool AR experiences. Like AR cocktails. I know that sounds very strange.
What does that look like?
Real actual cocktail. So depending on what it is, you hold your phone up to the drink, and if it's like a Moscow Mule, these snowflakes will kind of fly up out of the drink to make it look like effervescent snowflake bubbles. Wow. If it's a fall themed drink, then little fall maple leaves will circle around the drink. Can't quite say it's adding to the sensory experience of actually consuming a cocktail, but it is super fun, and just a sign of how unique pockets are sort of picking up something like AR and deploying it.
Well, that'll be, from an event perspective, you can do that with food. You can do that with anything. And
absolutely.
And it's not that expensive to do, right? This is not.
It's not.
This is really what people don't. People are afraid of it, but it's not a huge expense.
No, depending on what you're doing. If you're Niantic, who is the company that's leveraged existing data to create Pokemon Go a couple of years ago, which was sort of the beginning of the rise of this current AR wave. They're producing a follow-up game and experience with Harry Potter. I think they're already working on it. That comes out later this year. So something like that, at scale, yes, very labor intensive and cost intensive to produce something like that. But taking an existing 3D model that you can buy for $50, off the internet, and dropping that into a very simple AR experience. No, if you know to do that, and it's not that hard to learn, A, and B, easy enough to find someone who can do it, a couple $100.
Yep.
Not really much more than that.
Well, there's products like Layer and things like that, LAYAR, that seems to be a simple,
of course,
simple augmented reality thing, and there's billions of dollars, billions of dollars being invested into this area.
Yeah,
and so on any event organizer.
Two little fun things that we've just been prototyping with augmented reality. One is a secret menu. So if you think about an In-N-Out or anyone else that has off menu items available if you're in store or at a restaurant or QSR or whatever, walking in there and only seeing a secret menu in augmented reality. So if you hold your phone up to the wall, then this cool animated digital menu pops up and dances around, and you can see what where to get animal fries or whatever it is. So it's not taking something like a concept that already exists and using AR as a means to bring it to life. Right. And then another one, we call it the Insta Gallery. So one of the cooler sort of AR things that exist out there are, quote, portals, like portals to another world. So you have this like 3D environment, this cool digital animated environment that you actually like step through a door. This is a tough one to describe on a podcast, but stay with me. So the AR Insta Gallery, you authenticate with your Instagram account. It'll pull your top 15 or whatever, top 20, 25 Instagram posts from the year and kind of pop them into these frames, and you kind of walk around in your own virtual art gallery looking at your own Instagram world over the past year. Very self-serving, but it's a super fun experience. And again, no headset required. You just pop your phone open, or you pop the app open on your phone, and you're kind of stepping into your own, weird universe.
What do you think that's going to happen with the world of staging and AR, so that you have a speaker on a stage, but you can enhance that speaker in a gazillion different ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, quite simply, one of the most impactful AR, market disruptors is, IKEA letting you see what furniture might look like in your own room, and then of course trying on, clothing virtually is right on the heels of that, and then for real estate, the event industry, being able to see, you mentioned staging, like see what an event could actually look like without, having to open up a web browser or use, expensive software that might be labor intensive as well to kind of spec something out.
Right.
But yeah, in terms of like enhancing a stage experience, asking, or like a concert, right? Like how many cool applications of this could you see happening? And there's, stuff like it's not that new. I think like Katy Perry was the first person to use like synchronized LED wristbands in a stadium environment. And then a lot of people have done for 5 years plus now, a performer on stage might say like everyone turn, flashlights on your phone is sort of the new lighter, lighter Zippo to ask for an encore or whatever. But so then flip the phone around and think about like the cool effects that you can see up on stage.
Is that AR? What is that called? That kind of when like the thing that you had talked about when an athlete scores a touchdown and they touch their jersey and all of a sudden everybody's bands go off.
Oh yeah.
What is that called? No, so what are you asking for?
That would be much more IoT than augmented reality.
Okay.
Because that has nothing to do with the phones of folks in the audience. That's right. Just like, and it's more of a wearable too.
But wearables and augmented reality and all that are all fitting together in the experiential world. So it's indistinguishable.
We just call it, I mean, honestly, creative, like we've talked about, quote, creative technology for 10 years. Yeah. And that's, even before we were thinking about augmented reality or IoT or any of that stuff.
Okay, so let me finish this line of questioning. So we talked about voice, we talked about augmented reality. What else is in the lab that's about to pop?
Yeah, so obviously AI has been around for a while now, right? Arguably a very long time now. But the age of conversational commerce, which voice is right in there as well. So chatbots were sort of all the rage over the last couple of years. They're not top of the list right now. But creative applications of AI is only becoming more fascinating and more scary. One of the things that's kind of a big story right now is, I don't know how else to describe this, but like AI porn. So like people are, especially in like younger people are being very, very devious with regard to like taking a publicly available photo or face of like someone that and putting it onto like splicing it into like a porn scene. Like that's super scary and so terrifying, especially if it's happening with younger people.
Why is that AI? AI?
Because it's programmatically happening. You don't have to be like a Disney Imagineer to like cut that video together. Like there's AI programming that will allow that to happen. That's why it's AI.
So we're going to hear regulation.
So super scary stuff.
Will there be regulation on that type of stuff? How do they do that?
I certainly hope so. But it's a very specific application of when people say something like, don't put your face or information on the internet. It's a very acute, painful expression of why maybe you should think twice about doing that. And I'm typically all for I'm a little bit liberal and perhaps a little bit too loose and open with my own data, to be perfectly honest.
Right.
But yeah, some of the stuff all of a sudden does maybe make you think twice. Then next on the string of interesting things that are relevant for today's aspiring event practitioners and technology providers. Blockchain, I know, is sort of a loaded one, but
can you explain what that is in 15 words or less? That, I mean, I'm a really huge believer in that, and I've done the cryptocurrency thing and everything else.
Yeah. I would say the easiest way to think about it that I've thought about it is the future mechanism for secure data transfer. Let's put it, and fast data transfer. Let's put it that way. Although the crazy stories of how much coal powered server farms out in China are like churning through energy just to process crypto transfers is also dramatically sad and kind of scary. But blockchain as a mechanism for creating web technology is super interesting. So we're prototyping a few things right now, and then just for fun, just to highlight how volatile the crypto marketplace is, we're about to launch something called Bitcoin Regret Club, and it'll show you how much, if you had invested X on Y date, example, if you invested $100 in 2010, or it's funny to say invested instead of like purchased or mined Bitcoin, but stay with me. It'll tell you how much you'd be worth right now and how much that would translate to, X number of Starbucks lattes or something like that to make it kind of fun and create shareable content out of it. And then since Bitcoin has halved just in the last 6 weeks, can also show you the other side of regret. If you had bought a bunch of Bitcoin, mid-December, right before the holidays, how much you would have lost in theory. So Bitcoin Regret Club, and we it's just a little web app that we're building and launching, but we're actually exploring, are there elements of blockchain that we can actually use to power this web experience? So kind of meta on that one.
Do you think blockchain is going to be the new internet in a sense when it comes to registration and all the security issues?
Yeah. My honest answer is I'm not smart enough to actually know the real answer to that question. And anyone who says otherwise is probably spending 24 hours a day working on this stuff.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting.
You know what I mean? Like on the one hand, like some of this conceptually is not that complicated. And on the other hand, I think it actually is dramatically complicated. And it almost feels weird for me to talk about it because I dabble. I'm certainly far from a hardcore, web engineer. So I don't know, but based on just pure logic and especially the rise of, the share economy, which has been a big deal for almost 10 years now, or potentially a big deal for almost 10 years now. I do see a bright future for how blockchain or however blockchain evolves for how we live as citizens, how we live in communities, how we transfer money and experiences, whatever money even means in the future, probably will fundamentally mean the same thing. So short answer would be yes, but caveat that
I don't know either.
There's a lot of people talking about it.
Yeah, a lot of people. I think that the people in the event industry have to learn about it. A lot of people put their head in the sand,
Agreed.
And I think that being curious is like, to me, that's the key to my life anyway, is being curious. Let's go to what else is in the lab that anyone listening to this podcast will get lots of points at their next cocktail party if they bring it up. And let me throw in one other thing that and one of the and whether IoT or these types of innovations will help in security. We just went through another horrendous shooting in Florida. Security as an event attribute is one of the most important things. Is there anything that you're seeing coming down the pike that will help people, either scanning or doing immediate background checks or things like that?
No, sure. I guess a couple things. One, I would say, from a security standpoint, like the speed and transfer of information and verification, whether that's blockchain or otherwise, for sure. Gaming, so not just the rise of stadiums packed with people with $20 million prizes now available for people who are really, really good at video games. But beyond that, live synchronous multiplayer games that are web-based or otherwise, that's super interesting. And we're even like concepting a few similar things for big brand activation. So how can like 100 people play the same game in a virtual environment at the same time?
Are you talking like HQ?
For sure, that's part of it. That's made its HQ for X, Y, and Z has made its way into like 5 proposals I've written recently. I was actually referring more to it's called PUBG, Player Unknown Battleground, and that became the most popular game on Steam over the last year, and it just launched on Xbox, and it's a 100% battle royale style game. Battle royale as any reference to the old Japanese movie that turned into Hunger Games, sort of. So that is all of a sudden like taking over. Otherwise, I would say scanning through my own. Well,
let me throw in another sort of a little bit of a pivot here.
Yeah, please.
You have seen. Yeah. I mean, now whether you're really not an event organizer yourself, but you're seeing behavior, and you're seeing generational changes in behavior based on some of the IoT responses. How is the attendee at an event, from our point of view, different now, and what will be the future in Gen Z or whatever the next generation, because it's already starting, that you need to prepare for now? Like the keeping the attention. Yeah. What is the secret sauce?
Yeah. So I would say, as opposed to the temptation of following the new shiny object that launches, I would say doubling down on creating meaningful, impactful, engaging experiences, even if that means not moving away from what works. So you and I have seen this time and time again, sort of putting in the legwork ahead of time to sort of pre-select who are the 10 people that should meet each other or spend time with each other at an event, and structuring a half-day workshop or whatever it is that features small mini roundtables of getting 10 interesting people together physically. I would say doubling down on something like that. Otherwise, with regard to the future of technology, I think getting ahead of what it means to manage expectations, like what can people expect at an event. I think using the power of technology, especially going into the future, to let people know exactly what's going to happen in their 3-day event or half day.
Do you think people want to? Do you think people want to know what's going to happen, or they want to be surprised at what's going to happen?
I mean, sure, people want to be surprised by some aspect of it, and I'm not saying give people a pre-recorded visualization of what every second is going to look like or what the floor plan looks like or something like that. But I do think people they're going to continue to want to be sort of sold on why an experience or an event is worth their time. And I do feel like that, I do feel that using technology as a means to manage expectations and sell is only going to become more important.
Okay, you're getting into an interesting area though. Did you see the Black Mirror one where the woman is rated up and down the pike to go to this wedding?
Yeah,
and that everything is going to be rated. Is there something coming down the pike that will actually allow that to happen? That's
China
scarier.
Is literally doing that right now.
What are they doing?
That is a real thing in China. They're using facial recognition and big data to rate and analyze their citizens. And that has lots and lots of negative implications, including there's this tour guide who was caught on CCTV. Nothing that crazy, but he was got into a yelling match with someone on a small tour that he was giving around Beijing or whatever it was. So that was on CCTV. They use facial recognition. They have his profile, and he was immediately blacklisted and blackballed from the entire service industry. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty insane.
So do you see a world where facial recognition, as you leave an event, you'll be able to rate how someone looks, and then the whole event will be rated by the emotion that they're capturing? Is that literally?
Maybe, perhaps.
Philip Dick
it'll become easier to do that for sure. And I would say, back to your previous question, I would say facial recognition is probably another thing.
Another one in the lab that's going on.
100%. And that's now obviously, built into the iPhone 10 experience. And in, grocery stores, there's prototypes, even if it's just for like usability and user testing for a, grocery chain to launch a new product. It's, cameras with facial recognition that's saying, what is the emotional state of this person as they're holding a new can of Campbell soup or whatever. So yeah, I mean, from a testing and data standpoint, it's certainly there. And then, at an event, sure. But I do feel like there will be just enough regulation and just enough lingering concern on the privacy side and enough ownership for the masses, all of us who are at an event who maybe are not excited about automatically defaulting to sharing personally identifiable information, let alone our faces, let alone our expressions and emotional states.
But you can aggregate,
at least in this country.
Can't you aggregate facial expression? You don't have to. You sort of get a sense that, like, I'm envisioning using facial expression.
But what if I sneeze? I sneeze, and all of a sudden that skews the data because there's going to be just so many false positives there. Like, I don't think that technology is that good quite yet.
Right, but I mean, Activa. What is it? Activa that does facial recognition. I think that what it's called. Mm-hmm. Where instead of doing it individually on the web, there will be cameras on the audience, and a speaker will see the reaction to his speech in real time.
Sure. Yeah.
That's going to be, and it's a little less dramatic than the Democrats not standing up at a State of the Union.
Yeah, right.
So
exactly.
It's so interesting.
But I mean, honestly, I still like to think that we live in a world where if I personally am not willing to cough up that level of data and detail, I will at least be able to opt in or opt out. But we'll see.
Well,
how that actually plays out.
Ryan Costello from Event Farm, who's a pretty good thinker in this area, talks about this digital wonderland, but he thinks it's all permission based, and that starting at registration to an IO2 experience or an activation, opting in is the secret weapon here. And making sure that you respect everybody's privacy, or you have to opt in.
I hope I'd like to subscribe to that. We'll see if that actually remains status quo. But then taking that a step further, if I am opting in, I would hope to expect some point of value in return. Right.
Okay. Let's end with a couple of things that you guys were talking about years ago, and did they happen? Like you talked about the drum kits and things like that. Are we seeing the things that you thought would work take off, or the dog didn't eat the dog food type of thing?
Sure.
What does work and what doesn't work?
Sure. So one thing that we've been, have been talking about for a very, very long time, and there are a few other thinkers in the field that certainly subscribe to this, and it's sort of the premise of the magic of IoT would be enchanted objects. And you were alluding to that right in the beginning as well, right? Living in a magic wonderland. So for us, one thing that we had sort of jammed on early was the idea, we called it social machines, and we actually still have that active trademark. So the idea that, with a simple sensor and a little bit of connectivity and a nice, clever idea, and you can bring an inanimate object to life. So we call that social machines. Other folks, I totally blanking on his name, but there's someone that kind of coined enchanted objects. And I love that. I love that description, perhaps more than social machines. So yes, I do think that happened and that is happening. And that also, when we talk about not just with IoT, but when we look at augmented reality, we're talking about the AR cocktails and having like little animated creatures, float and dance above a cocktail that you're drinking. I would also argue that although you need a phone and a screen to look through, that is also bringing a level of magic to typically inanimate objects. So I certainly think that is playing out in a real way. With virtual reality,
things like what about the things like the social cooler and the idea of is that still very popular?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the first ideas that we brought to life as a quote social machine. What I think maybe that we had initially thought would stick around a bit more that not necessarily has is the idea that the input for something like that would be getting like 1 million tweets, right? And there's been plenty of folks who have taken that formula like the Game of Thrones season 5 or 6 launch, where every tweet would work toward toppling a statue of King Joffrey out in a big public square. So having like Twitter be the mass input for one of these experiences, I definitely thought that would, kind of stick around. It hasn't necessarily, and I think that's a good thing, because it gets into let's not sort of force a social engagement or social media input into the equation, where it could be human proximity, or it could be smiles, or it could be voice. So going beyond just the hashtag to be able to trigger a fun experience in the real world.
So that kind of is, if you were to present that today, you don't think you'd have the momentum on that kind of idea, or is it just been done?
Depends on what it is. Yeah, I mean, it totally depends on what it is. It might still be relevant if we were concepting something for a Super Bowl halftime show. Like
right.
Maybe we would want 1 million tweets, but I wouldn't start there. Whereas I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I probably would have.
So where would you start? Like, where do you start? You talked about the selfie thing is peaked. You talked about some of these other things. Like, what is the modern event activation guy looking for now?
The simplest possible, like, realistic human input. So, and that's why voice is so exciting.
Right.
Like, this is what is easier than saying 5 magic words, right?
So simplicity.
Why would I have to reach in my pocket? Yeah.
How about physical gameplay? That was hot for a while. Is that still like falling into the ball pit at an event to make it feel like you're in the cloud, which is what some of these shows have done?
Sure.
Is physical gameplay still hot?
Yes, but I would say, like, let's look at abstract that up a layer. Like, what is that actually all about? That's actually all about taking a break from the normal and expected and feeling like a kid again. Right. So it's that initial insight that I would argue is probably never going to go away. So finding new ways to bring that to life, I would argue is a great place to start.
Right. So as a formal, when you're talking technology and IoT, you don't necessarily have to do IoT to get the same effect, in a sense.
Not at all.
So you're really you got to make sure that people are not just thinking it has to be technology. It's you're selling this creativity of engagement.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, there's a concept that we've been working around that kind of looks and feels like it's IoT, but there's no internet connectivity whatsoever, and it's just triggered. It's a little experience that's triggered just by human contact, and the input is like conductive tape, and then just by touching fingers or high-fiving or fist bumping can trigger something in the physical world. So nothing.
What is that?
Phones,
so what is
no
that? Play that out
sensors.
A little bit. Explain that on radio a little bit more. Like, what's a real world case?
So right now you put your hand on this little on a little table. Has a little handle on it. So we're facing each other, staring at each other, just 2 humans hanging out in the real world. And then with our other hands, we fist bump, we high five, we touch fingers. We kiss on the cheek, whatever. It could be like a little kissing booth. That's one of the ways we've actually been thinking about it. And then just by skin-to-skin contact, it'll complete an actual electrical circuit. A little much. Don't worry. And then the output could be, Red Bull falls down from the ceiling on parachutes, or a branded swag shoots out of a T-shirt cannon or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, I could go on forever with you, but we have to stop because I think people will, sometimes when you're driving to work, you want to drive around longer while you're listening to these kind of podcasts. Yeah. But what any final words on how you see the future as you have a new child coming into the world? What is that child going to be experiencing in the next, during that person's lifetime?
No, for sure. I would double down on what we were talking about 10 or 15 minutes ago, which is don't be scared to focus on what works, and what works in some ways hasn't necessarily changed in a very long time, even with the rise of wildly interesting and creative technology, and that is the simple human experience will always or almost always trump a technology infused virtual environment. And that depending on what it is, Yeah.
That's a great way to end this. But can you, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do it?
Probably just email, and it's just dj@isl.co.
Perfect. And the website for the company is?
isl.co.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, DJ.
Awesome.
And we want to continue this. So thanks a lot.
So, David, I think we delivered on what I promised in the intro, a look at the wildly creative things that iStrategyLabs is dreaming up for events.
And I think that they're leaders in terms of what's happening. When I show some of his things at my presentations, I mean, mouths open. Oh my God, they're looking at it. They're like exposed to, oh, this is what we can do. And it makes everyone else more creative.
Right. They're very interactive too. It's cause and effect almost. Your guest does X and then Y happens. And we heard a lot about the latest bright, shiny objects, but I appreciated that he talked about the philosophy that guides their experiences. It's no matter what the platform, what the bright, shiny object is, their idea is to keep the technology hidden. That way it feels organic, it feels approachable, easy to use, and it doesn't get in the way of a brand message.
Yeah, and I think that people are saying that we're in the post-digital age where it's just part of life, and so you don't have to show the shiny screen or the new piece of technology that's not really where the action is.
Right, and he also said that even in our social media obsessed world, he believes in the power of live gatherings and that it's physical objects and experiences, and they can be enabled by tech, or they can even have a web component, but it happens face to face.
It all works together.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. One thing that he mentioned that I'm going to be keeping an eye on is esports. I'm fascinated by this, and it's a world that I've only kind of dipped my toe into figuring out. It's just an obsessive thing for so many people. But what's interesting is that he's predicting that brands are really going to figure out how to tap into that. So whether sponsorship of the current esports exists, but how are brands going to harness that phenomenon for their own use and bring it maybe even more into the mainstream?
Yeah, no, I think that the interesting thing about all of this is that we all bounce off of each other. That you think it's so magical that somebody's doing that. They happen to have a conversation with somebody at an event and they were excited about what they heard. And they're just building on it when they do their own brainstorming meetings.
Exactly.
Great. So Beth, what's going on at BizBash?
We're coming down to the wire with the BizBash Event Space Awards. The deadline is March 16th. That's this Friday. So if you're an event venue, and we're talking about conference centers, hotels, independent event spaces, live music or concert venues, restaurants, cultural spaces, I could go on, and you think you have a great space for events, then we have a category for you. And if you're a planner who knows a venue that really should be recognized, tell them to enter. So everyone can find more information about that at bizbash.com/event space awards.
And one other thing that we've got going on is we just announced in the last few weeks that we are going to be relaunching our magazine product, our regular magazine product. But this time we're going to be using some of the things we talked about in the show today, augmented reality, because I believe that a magazine is one of the perfect use cases for augmented reality. But you've got to be very careful on how you use it. So look for our fall issue that is an augmented reality enabled product.
And you're talking about a print edition, because of course we've had many digital editions,
print.
But this will be a print issue.
Back to print, because people love the magazine experience even in digital form, but we're finding that print also works well.
So we'll be doing both, but keep an eye out for that for sure. All right.
Great. Well, until next time,
gather on.
Gather on.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter at GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on. This episode is sponsored in part by PC NameTag. When's the big event? PC NameTag is here for planners with their exclusive event badge, plus other meeting supplies, including promotional products. Count on customized services that save time while helping you present an extraordinary event, one that leads to memorable and meaningful connections. Call 888-698 5500 or visit pcnametag.com today. This episode is also sponsored by Event Leadership Institute. Invest in yourself and your staff with self-paced online event education designed to fit into your busy schedule. Subscribe to the Event Leadership Institute for only $25 per month and gain access to an extensive on-demand video library of classes, as well as interviews with industry leaders. Best of all, you can watch classes in small pieces or all at once. For more information, visit eventleadershipinstitute.com.